Okay. Bamidbar. Yeah. Okay. So we begin the fourth Sefer, fourth Chumash. Right. With Bamidbar Sinai. That's all. Right. V'daber Hashem Moshe Bamidbar Sinai, page 726. Bamidbar Aleph. Be'echad lachodesh hasheni. It was day one of the second month. What's interesting is that is on Thursday. The second month is Sivan, and the first day. Sorry, it's on Wednesday. Rosh Chodesh Sivan. In those days, they didn't have titles for the month. They called the month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4. Right. Now the count of the month, even though we normally Rosh Hashanah at the beginning of the year, but the count of the month, as Hashem told them when they left Mitzrayim, this month of Nisan is going to be the beginning of the months. So Chodesh Harishon is you read all Parshas Emor all about Pesach. It talks about B'Chodesh Harishon, the first month. B'Chodesh Hasheni Shavuos, and B'Chodesh Hashishi. You know what I mean? So it goes around the year. So when it talks about Echad LaChodesh Hasheni, that is why the Gemara actually brings down that when Ezra portioned out the Torah to create it that we read the whole Torah every year, he especially made it that we read Parshas Bamidbar before Shavuos every year. All the other parashas are flexible, but Parshas Bamidbar is always before Shavuos because it's literally it's about Shavuos. It's happening now. It's some say also because he wanted B'chul Kaisai, he wanted to put the Techacha, the rebuke of Parshas B'chul Kaisai before Shavuos, and the rebuke of Parshas Kisavai, I think that's before Rosh Hashanah or something like that. So there's a certain anyway. So it's very deliberately done. It's not a coincidence that we read about Sivan in Sivan, and on Shabbos is going to be the third day of Sivan, and we're going to read about how they left Mitzrayim. So yeah, V'daber Hashem el Moshe. What is interesting is that this is the second year after they left Mitzrayim. Yeah. Because if it was the first year, they would be getting the Torah on the fifth, on the 6th or 7th of Sivan. But no, instead they got the Torah. This is the second year. It's Bashana Hashenish at Seisa Mitzrayim. So yeah, the names of the month Nisan, Iyar, Sivan, Tammuz, that all came later during the time, right? The Babylonians. Mm-hmm. Even in the time of Nach, there are some names for the months that are brought down. Like I saw the month of Cheshvan is Yerach Bul or something like that. They had certain names in time of Nach, but they weren't fixed. And also, they're not like nowadays. Everybody knows this Nisaniya 7 times of, etc. Okay. So Hashem said to Moshe Bamidbar Sinai, in short, we have to count the Jewish people. We have to count the men. We have to see, who's fit to go to war. Everybody is fit to go to war between 20 and 60, right? They had to be counted, and they counted, and they also needed to have a head of each tribe, head of each shevet, and they counted the Shmois Hanashim Shiyad, the names of the people that would be the tribal leaders. Now, Moshe and Aaron would essentially do the census, they would do the count, but they needed the help of the leader of each tribe. So the leader of each tribe, they knew who was a part of his shevet, who wasn't a part of each shevet, which families, etc., etc. And therefore, they were the ones that did the count. They gave the numbers in, and then they worked out how many there were. So yeah, here we have the names of the Shvatim and the names of the tribes, and who would be leading the count. Who was the leader of each tribe? So without reading them all, you basically see in Lagad, the Naphtali, all the Shvatim appear over here. Okay, and if you look in the pasuk Tes Zayin on the next page, 728, it's an interesting word. Eile, we read it Karu'e, not Kari'e. Eile Karu'e, they were called They were summoned by the assembly. They were sort of chosen to be the head of the tribes. Each tribe had thousands of people, and they each chose this head, and they were the ones.
And also, Rabbi, if you look, going back to verse 2, where it says Se'u, and now we're talking here about Nesi'e Matod. It means to lift up, like.
Yeah.
But I like very much that it says Se'u et rosh kol adad bnei Israel. It means every rosh is equal. It's not that this mate is more important than the other.
Yeah.
All of us.
Very interesting.
That's very, very nice.
It's funny, I think to myself sometimes that the count was done similar to how we count membership in most shuls nowadays. If you ask any rabbi how many members you have, they say, most rabbis will say, I have 100 membership units. What does it mean, membership unit? It could be a single person or it could be a family, but everybody, it's a unit. Right. The same over here. If you're counting men from 20 to 60, by definition, you're basically counting families, either individuals or you're counting families. But anyway, they needed to know for multiple reasons. The Gemara says already, why were they counted so many times? Because you count something that's precious. When you have money, you count it again and again. Like, it's precious. Hashem wanted to show the Jewish nation precious. But also they needed to know how many people they had for war, how to split them up, how the camps would be laid out, how they would travel. So logistically, you need to. That's why in America they have a census every 5 years or something, because you need to know how many people you have. So they have a census. So they do the census.
Like inventory.
Inventory, exactly. You gotta check. And we learn from here, by the way, that you only go to war from the age of 20. Nowadays in Israel, they change it. They say, we're desperate. We're going to make you go from 18. In the time of the Torah, no, he goes from age 20. And I have to say, sometimes when you see the pictures of these young children that die in Gaza, and like 18 years old, it's like, poor kid. He's just a kid. Right? He's a kid. He's maybe 20, okay, he's a little adult, almost. Still a kid, but 18, like, it feels too young. But anyway, when you need soldiers, you need soldiers, But the point is, like, in those days, the age to go to war was from 20. Okay.
I like the fact that the list of the Nesi'im, it's have the same tropes. Okay, when you have like a long name like Binyamin and so on, so only the beginning is different, but in general it's the same tropes.
Yeah.
It's maybe it comes also to show that no matter if it's a small tribe or a big tribe or a rich or poor and so on, they are all equal.
Nice.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Besides that, of course, it's easier part to read
Easy part, and
to remember it.
It sounds good as well. Anyway, a very good point. I want to point out also in Pasuk Yud Ches, it says they gathered the whole nation again on the same day, on day 1 of Sivan, the Chodesh Hasheni. There's a very unique way of bringing this word, Vayisyaldu al mishpachesam v'esav. They established the genealogy. It's a very unique word. Leled means to give birth. Vayisyaldu in this case means and they gave birth.
It's lehityaled.
Right. So it's a unique word. What it means is, Rashi explains, what it means is that they established the yichus, the genealogy. So they found this guy, John. Okay, John, where do you come from? Well, my father says, okay, they wrote it down. It shows you the importance of yichus, of genealogy. Not because that important where I come from, which is also important, but it's important that we stay pure, like, as a nation. For example, the tribes, when they got to Israel, it really mattered. Were you from this tribe or that tribe? If they would have just gone through the desert for 40 years and everybody gets married to everybody, we forget who's from which tribe, how do you divide the land? And in those days, every tribe had their own job, their own role. Dan was, at the back, and they were gathering this, and they were the fighters, and this Yehuda. So it was very important to keep track of who was from. So Vayisyaldu al mishpachatam l'beis avatam means they established their genealogy, their yichus, according to their families, according to their father's household.
Also, I think it was important for them to know, because when they walked in the desert, Bamidbar, and they had the Mishkan in the middle, and the Levim around, so the tribes were like in four corners, and they had to know
Where
what
to go.
tribe is this, okay?
Very good. Yeah.
Because they moved that way 40 years
Yeah.
until they came to
So,
Israel.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was very important. Yeah. And then we have the final counts. Without going into read all of them, there's not much written on it. But it says Reuben, Shimon, God. By the way, the tribes are written in many different orders. This is one of the different orders that are mentioned. God, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun, Yosef, and in Yosef there's Ephraim, and there's Manasseh, and then there's Binyamin, there's Dan, there's Asher, there's Naphtali, and finally we have the total amount of the whole nation was 603,550. Very, very close number to what it was at the end of the desert when they were counted again. But it was a very stable number. That's just the number 600,000. Everybody knows 600,000 left Mitzrayim. That's 600,000 men between 20 and 60. It's about 3 million, the whole nation altogether.
The children, you mean?
Yeah,
yeah,
the nation altogether. So that's the final count. However, it's worth noting the pasuk of Mem Zayin says the Levium weren't counted. They normally were. In this count, they weren't counted. We know already that there was about 25,000, maybe 21,000 Levium between 20 and 60. So if you want to add that on, it's 625,000 roughly. But the number of nations without that was it? So Rashi just says that the Levium weren't counted because they were on a different level. They were different. They were different plane. Even more so, remember that this was just 1 year, or really less than 1 year, after the golden calf, after the Egel. And before the Egel, originally the firstborns, the Bechorim, were supposed to be the Kohanim. They were supposed to be working in the temple, the Beis HaMikdash. However, they lost it because they joined in. The firstborns didn't. Who didn't? The Levium. Levium didn't. So
they took the place of the Bechorim.
They took the place of Bechorim, right. So to reinforce that, they weren't even counted. They were like, Moshe and Hashem wanted to point out they're different. They're different. They're holier. And we're not going to count them together with everybody else. Now, they were counted, but separately. And then the Levium were actually given different jobs that they had to do. And in Perek Beis, on page 732, we go into how they would travel, how the nation would travel. As you mentioned before, they had a very specific formation. We in yeshiva we used to often get this as an example of how, traveling in formation is not a bad thing. On the contrary, it's just order. It's just it's rules. It's encounter. It's not. If somebody told you nowadays you'd have to travel in a certain way, you get upset. But guess what? We all live with it. It's not considered a oppressive rule or slavery or anything. When you go on a plane, they tell you got to sit down, put your seatbelt on, you do it because that's how we're traveling. So when they were traveling, they were told you're going to travel in a very specific way. And who would be in the east? There would be Yehuda, and there would be, and how many people he had, and Yisachar, and there's a exact map of who would be traveling in what way. And so this continues until Perek Gimel. So Perek Beis. So essentially, Perek Aleph is the count. Perek Beis is the traveling, how they would travel, the exact order they would travel. And as we mentioned, Shevet Dan traveled at the back. The Gemara says that they would pick up all the lost objects that everybody would drop, and they would find them because
there's a word for this in Hebrew, me'asef.
Me'asef, very good. Me'asef.
I
think it comes in the pasuk, that word.
Really?
So,
oh.
Yeah, I thought so. Let me see. Or maybe the Gemara says that Dan was the Me'asef v'chol ha'machanot or something like that. Yeah, I recognize it though. Maybe it's not a pasuk, but
But it's very, Rabbi, when you think about it, about the Midbar, about the desert with the Mishkan and the Jewish people, it's like that this is our story, okay? That we have the Mishkan, not necessarily in the land of Israel because what happened, it was this, but we have it in our heart, okay? So we have the Mishkan that connects all of us together. And that's how we are traveling. The desert, it's like the Golan, like the exile. but we survive because we have the Mishkan and we are together, as you said, as order and we are united. I think I see
Very
like the
interesting.
story of the Jewish people.
Very interesting. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of depth to this, you should know, Kabbalistically and everything. I knew someone in Gibraltar, great, he's still alive, a great Jew, a really sweet guy, who quietly used to learn a lot of Kabbalah, a lot of mysticism. And one of the things he used to do for fun is he would come to synagogue, look around, and see who's sitting where,
We sitting what?
who sits where.
Okay.
You know, when you go into synagogue, you sit anywhere. So, and basically, the shul in Gibraltar, all the shuls are very old, so they're very big and they're very rectangular. You know, like BSBI, like a good old shul. And he used to basically say that the nature of a person, whether they have the nature of Yehuda or of Dan or of God, is where they will sit in the shul.
Oh,
So he would write out this like chart
That's
and be like,
nice.
hey, look who's sitting here. Do you not agree that he's like Yehuda? So he's on the Mizrach, you know, and look at the back. He's more of a helping pick up, you know, look at him. He's like God. And he would be able to predict if a new person ever came to shul, he'd be like, I know where he's going to sit.
Oh my God.
He's probably going to sit over there. Because he had this theory that in shul, people naturally, you feel like you're almost by the Mishkan
Right.
with the holiness, and people naturally, Kabbalistically, he said, would align themselves close to where the ancestors were when they. So it was a very cute theory. He once explained it to me, and he sat me down with his whole map he had in his house, and it definitely was like eye opening. But it just shows you there's a lot of depth.
Yeah.
It's not just
Yeah.
yeah. It's like we have to try it here. You know, you should know even psychologically. You know, when some people like to sit near a door. Some people like to sit in the middle. Some people like to sit in the back. Some people like to sit in the side.
Mm.
Everybody has their own nature where they
Right.
like to sit
Exactly.
without even thinking about it. So,
Yeah, that's true.
okay. So yeah. So we'll finish with the Perek Gimel, where it talks about the Kohanim, Aaron, and their job, and how they would be effectively chosen, as the pasuk says in pasuk end of pasuk Yud Beis. V'hayu li halvim. Levim are mine. Hashem says, I chose the Levim, and it says very clearly, Tachas kol b'chor peterechem b'nei Yisrael. It was supposed to be the B'chorim, but no. Why? Kili kol b'chor b'yam hakos v'chol b'chor mitzrayim. Originally, I made the B'chorim, but it's going to be. We still do pidyon haben, by the way, to B'chor, but still, the Shevet Levi were the ones that were chosen. And they were told that at this point in Perek Gimel, they were told that we now need to count the Levim. Obviously, it was done separately, and it goes through and it mentions every single family, every single major family in Perek Gimel, Kahas, Hevroni, Uzieli, all these names, and Merari, of course, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari with the three children. And it comes to the end, the final count. In Pasuk Mem Gimel, page 742, is 22,300. Sorry, 22,370. All right, 22,273. So that's the total count of the Levim. You should know, just as a side note over here, it says at the beginning, I'm not sure if it's here or in a different parasha, where it says that Aaron or Moshe was commanded to wave all the Levim, to pick them up, first of all to shave all their hair, and then to wave them. And it says it's a miracle, because you're waving 22,000 people. You know, after 10 people, you get tired already. So it's a miracle that he could do it. Another thing to note is that it says in the beginning of Pasuk Lamates, there's dots. There's 5 dots on top of the word Aharon.
Oh, yeah.
Aharon, each letter has a dot. The Mefarshim, the Gemara explains that this comes to tell you that when we count 22,273, didn't include Aaron himself. Aaron himself was not counted. Why? It's a different question, but he wasn't counted. He wasn't counted. Okay. See the dots, yeah.
That's
That's in a
interesting.
Sefer Torah.
גם בסקול זה כן.
וואו.
Yeah.
רגע, נקודות גם בסקול?
There's a few
גם
words.
בסקול?
Yeah.
יש כמה
Really?
מקומות
There's a few places that has dots. This is one of them. There's a couple other places. Anyway, we'll leave it there because I have to go.
Okay, okay.
Shorter
Okay, תודה
share
רבה.
today. But yeah, it goes on to talk more about the Kohanim. Anyway, thank you very much.
תודה
Thank you,
רבה, רבי.
Rabbi.
Thank you for
תודה
coming.
רבה. Next